भूतकाल की जो कार्यवाही है, उसके फैमिली के मेंबर के जो कोई एक्टिविटी है वो बहुत अच्छी थी। ब्राह्मण लोग थे और वैसे भी ब्राह्मण के जो कुछ है उसके संस्कार भी बड़ा अच्छा था। क्राइम किया कि नहीं किया हमको पता नहीं है, लेकिन क्राइम के बारे में मैं क्या, कोई इंटेंशनली भी हो सकता है ना।
If you thought it was impossible to add more insult to the injury of Bilkis Bano, well, think again. If it wasn't bad enough to see the early release of the 11 convicts who gang raped her, her mother, two other women in her family, and killed her child, her infant toddler daughter, using a stone, if seeing the release of these men was not bad enough, along comes a BJP MLA on the panel that recommended the release of these convicts, telling us at Mojo Story that these men he thought were good men, men who behaved themselves in prison, men who may not have even committed the crime they've been convicted for, men who are Brahmins, men who therefore apparently have good Sanskaars. This interview is actually a revelation because it permanently settles any theoretical debate around whether this remission program is with the intention of reform and rehabilitation. It clearly is not. But the question is, what should happen now? Will the system be jolted into taking back its decision? Will the center step in? Lawyers are pointing out that the Gujarat government, under the 1992 law, could not have released the men who did this to Bilkis Bano without the consultation of the center. To discuss this and the message it sends to women at large, let's introduce our distinguished panel this evening. We're joined by Zakia, who's a human rights activist and was at the forefront of leading the campaign to abolish triple talaq, a campaign she ran successfully. Now we're talking about the rights of Muslim women. Well, what about Bilkis Bano? Also joining us is Flavia Agnes, one of our best known gender rights lawyer. Great to see you, Flavia. Yamini Aiyer, president of the Center for Policy Research, one of our most astute analysts and writers, is with us. And also joining us, finally, is Gargi Nandi Roy, who's a political analyst. It's great to see you, Gargi, as ever. Zakia, I would like to start with you today. So much has been said and done in the name of Muslim women, including your fight to actually scrap and read down triple talaq, a fight I actually support and supported. Now look at what's happening with Bilkis Bano. I mean, she was 19 years old. She was 5 months pregnant. These men have been greeted with flowers and garlands, and now you have a member of the panel telling us that these men were good men. They came from a good family. They're of good caste pedigree. Your thoughts, Zakia?
So I would say that, this act of pardoning these guys has been the most shocking. It is shocking beyond words. It's a shame, actually, Barkha. It's morally repugnant. It's ethically outright questionable, and it makes mockery of any sense of justice that we might have retained over the last years where so much has happened. Having said that, I saw the interview done by the Mojo with this member on the panel. Let me say I was shocked, but I was not surprised. I was not surprised because this is who they actually are. This is how they talk. This is how they think, and this is how they act. Had the 11 men who were convicted for rape and murder for to life imprisonment, had they been belonging to some other caste or quote unquote lower caste, I'm not sure whether they would have received so much consideration and supposed compassion of an otherwise very apathetic state. So it's like all paradigm of justice all the paradigms of compassion, which are at the heart of our constitution, have been turned upside down, and a very harsh, ruthless, cruel state is showing compassion for the culprits, and a state which is just not concerned about Bilkis and numerous other survivors. Let's
Yeah.
not forget that this is the state which refused to provide any kind of relief or rehabilitation or compensation or avenues for legal justice to the survivors of the Gujarat riots. This is a state which has been in denial of the grave wrongs which have been done to the survivors of Gujarat. So how come this display of compassion has now come about? I think it's a shame, and it has come, when we are all celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and the day when the Prime Minister is giving a speech from the ramparts of the Red Fort, talking about Nari Shakti and upholding women power. On that same day, his own state's government is allowing these criminals of the worst kind to go free. So what is
Yeah.
the message we are giving to all the women and children across the country who are the survivors of sexual assault and
And
who
I'm
are
glad
awaiting
you
justice?
and I'm glad you've made this point about the normal way, the very quiet way, in fact, in which this BJP MLA makes this point. It's almost as if he doesn't even understand what the fuss is over his comments. And I'm going to come to Yamini in just a moment. But for anybody who's missed this interview, just listen in again to the complete casual way in which he's actually talking about the caste of these convicts. It is really, really revealing. Just take a look.
क्राइम किया कि नहीं किया हमको पता नहीं है, लेकिन क्राइम के बारे में मैं क्या कोई इंटेंशन भी हो सकता है ना कि जो भूतकाल की जो कार्यवाही है उसके फैमिली के मेंबर के जो कोई एक्टिविटी है वो बहुत अच्छी थी, ब्राह्मण लोग थे और वैसे भी ब्राह्मण के जो कुछ है उसके संस्कार भी बड़ा अच्छा था, इसलिए किसी को मतलब करके गुने में डाल के उसको पनिशमेंट करने का बद इरादा भी हो सकता है.
So what you're seeing here, Yamini, is the referencing of the caste, linking the caste to good values, also questioning guilt here, even though this was a case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I was just interviewing Justice Deepak Gupta, who was one of the 3 judges who actually awarded Bilkis 50 lakhs as exemplary compensation in 2019. And he said that this is smacking both of misogyny and majoritarianism in the way that it's unfolded. Yamini, I mean, this is an executive decision. This interview has caught everybody's attention, but will it really change anything? What are you thinking at this point?
I'm actually honestly at a loss for words because we've celebrated our 75th independence. We have celebrated the fact that India, against the odds, survived with all its warts as a democracy. And yet we have displayed to ourselves how limited our democratic commitment is and how limited our commitment to freedoms genuinely are to all citizens. We have become so narrow-minded, so limited, and so bigoted in our thinking that we have allowed this to happen with relatively limited outrage. What does this say about the machinery of the state, its ability to be accountable? Bilkis Bano's question about justice ending here should move all of us to quite literally onto the streets. But we're sitting in the comfort of our homes, looking at this and allowing legal arguments, bigotry, misogyny to take over. We should be outraged. We should be deeply outraged, and we should be very worried about what this says of our democracy, what this says of our commitments to individual freedoms, what this says for the kind of society we had hoped to build in 1947. And what this says for how far we've come. It's blatant misogyny, it's blatant bigotry, it's communalization at its worst, and it doesn't bode well for what our future holds.
Before I come to Flavia, the point you make about the missing outrage, there is some outrage, but it's certainly not like the Nirbhaya moment. And Nirbhaya's own mother is actually saying, "Where's the outrage? Why isn't there more outrage? What is happening? Is this class? Is this, is this that people like us, PLUs, only get onto the streets when we identify with the survivor/victim? What's the subtext here, Yamini?"
I think it's all these things and more. I think it is undoubtedly a sign of how deep communal bigotry runs at some level, and how that shapes our reactions to many things. We justify not being on the streets out of arguing about the current political context. I think that's very much part of it. I also think that in the current context, where civic freedoms, political freedoms have been so limited, where ominous claims are made about what we need to do to fight social evil from the bully pulpit on a fairly regular basis. It takes a lot, for citizens to come out on the streets, because the likelihood of that ending in a lifetime in jail, where process is going to be the real prison rather than the prison itself, it means people are thinking twice. This is the final achievement of an authoritarian democracy. We have been very close to it. We are pretty much there now.
Mm. Flavia, you've done so much work trying to change the mindsets of judges, the entrenched sexism. Justice Gupta was talking about how when he started practicing, how the rape wasn't even considered a crime by some judges, and so much has changed. And then comes along a moment like this. This is not the court's decision. The Supreme Court does send it back to the state. But the state then sets up a panel where, as you heard one of the MLAs, you can sense his attitude there. Now, my question is, this is not a legal debate. It's being presented as one, but it's actually not a legal debate. There is judicial review possible, but when I asked Bilkis Bano's lawyer, will she go back to court? She said, how much courage do you expect one woman to show?
Absolutely, I agree with her. How much courage can one woman actually show? She's been so bold. She stood trial, secured a conviction that has stood the scrutiny of the High Court and Supreme Court. She's fought tooth and nail for justice. And today what she finds is those very guys who are our own neighbors are out celebrating. They're being garlanded, distribution of sweets. I mean, how much worse can it get for a victim? I mean, there is absolutely no thinking. Where is the democracy? Where is the 75-year celebration? And the issue is, why does the caste come in the surface of acquittal, come in the context of the acquittal? That a Brahmin cannot rape, a Muslim woman's rape is not serious. How far can we go? And what is the hope for the future? I feel a sense of despair. I feel that this is a moment that should all of us be so anguished about, because it brings in caste, it brings in communalism, it brings in the state power, the executive power of the state. As you rightly said, this is not the judiciary is doing, it is the state doing. And that's the irony, because here you have BJP ruled state. And here you have communal violence perpetrated on the victims by the state-sponsored brutality. And today you have a committee, which is an executive committee, who's making a recommendation, and the BJP MLA defending their caste. So what are we saying? Brahmins are never raped? Or if it is a scheduled caste, they rape but not the upper caste? If it is a majority Hindu person, they don't rape. Or it's only the minority. What are the messages going out through this?
And I think the message, yeah, and of course, misogyny exists across states, across regimes. I think one, we need to acknowledge that. Two, I must say that women political voices are relatively muted. And this is not just true for women in the BJP. This is actually true for many prominent female sort of political voices. And as Yamini said, there's all sorts of politics that is getting into the way of treating this as a woman's sort of fight for justice. Gargi, let me bring you in. I don't know what the other side is. A lot of people told me, oh, are you having a debate? And I said, what should I debate? I don't know. What is the other side? There is no other side as I see it. Do you see another side?
Right. No, I don't see any other side to it, Barkha. I think it is very immoral, if not illegal, Legal side can be better spoken by legal luminaries. But as a woman and as a student of sociology, I see that the rape has been used as a weapon against women across the world, be it in a riot or be it in a war, everywhere. So I was fighting for women in Kolkata last year who were political opponents of the ruling party, and they were raped. Political opponents' wives and daughters were raped. We have seen it in Kashmir. Girija Tiku was raped and chopped. So I feel my voice is for all women, for all crime against a woman. So whether it is a Bilkis Bano or a Girija Tiku or back home in West Bengal, the women who were raped last year. So this is misogyny everywhere. You see two men fighting, one person will abuse the other, taking the mother's name or sister's name. I'm not using the abuse here on the show. So that is the mindset of some men across party lines. So, and garlanding this kind of people who have committed heinous crimes is obscene. It is nothing but obscene. This cannot be supported. But from the legal side, I asked some lawyers ki after 14 years, maybe they could have applied for, and the state under CRPC 433, it has a provision to grant remission, but it has been done by the executive. So, of course, it can be challenged, and the state has to present to the court their arguments for giving remission. So, I think
Well,
the
you know
case is
what,
not
Gargi?
lost.
No, the case is not lost,
Yes,
but someone has to go back to court for it. And Yamini, one of the
yes.
points that Justice Gupta was making is that let this not come back to court. Let the executive on its own take this back. But here's the question: there's so much opacity around what level this was cleared at. We know about the committee now, but if this was done under a 1992 law, as has been suggested, then lawyers say it would have necessarily needed the approval of the same center that issued guidelines just this summer saying that rape is excluded from special prisoner remission schemes.
Right.
So are we hopeful that an executive reversal could take place, or what should happen now? What can happen now?
I don't see the possibility of an executive of this going. I mean, I just don't see the possibility. I see this very much as a political decision. It's not clear what process was followed. It seems most certainly that there is very little legal justification given the background, although I leave that for lawyers to comment on. But regardless, the fact that this was picked and not many other cases where prisoners are in jail, where they may well have been quote unquote good citizens from quote unquote good castes, good backgrounds, well behaved, there was a very clear choice. This very clear choice is, to my mind, very clearly a political act. Do we have members of the state, whether in the executive or in the judiciary, that have the courage to act outside of the political context? It is now becoming increasingly rare. We can only hope, because that will be the saving grace. But I think when Bilkis Bano says, is this where justice ends? I'm afraid it does appear as though this is all that we can do. This is where justice ends. And as citizens, it is our collective responsibility to outrage loud and clear.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Zakia, you have fought so visibly and volubly for the rights of Muslim women. And, and I'm not saying the context in which Bilkis Bano gets raped and loses her daughter, loses 14 members of her family is, of course, 2002. But as a message to women everywhere, this matters, right? Because, like, for example, the lawyer for Bilkis Bano, Shobha Gupta, told me that another rape survivor called her up and said, if this is going to be the outcome, should I be actually even bothering to fight this case? So that is what is going to happen across the trenches of ideological differences. Women are going to look at this case and say, we are never going to get justice. Zakia?
Yeah, so that is the kind of hopelessness this act is going to spread, because also we have to recognize the fact that Bilkis has been a heroine for all of us. She has fought this fight against all odds, and it has been a long democratic fight over almost like 1.5 decades. and she has had to run from pillar to post. She has to go into hiding. Her family has to keep shifting every few months. And, with the whole world watching, the whole country watching, and that's how she got justice. That's how she got compensation. But now in one stroke, all of it has been undone by the state in what can be only called a very, very dubious decision. Because technicalities apart, one does not have to really be a lawyer to understand that even if there is a remission policy, what kind of a policy that would be, which will allow remission for rapists, gang rape, those who indulge in gang rape and murder. So I mean, this is, it's a commonsensical thing. It sort of does not conform to any sense of human sensitivity, human emotions, and it certainly doesn't conform to the constitutional values of gender justice and gender equality. And I must also say, Barkha, that these it has been a continuous shock after one after the other, and each shock is a greater shock than the earlier one. So one, you thought that earlier there was arrests of women and girls who were protesting against CAA. Then if that was not horrendous enough, there came this bully by app thing, followed by Sully deals. Now this has come, followed by this remission of rapists and murderers. So I mean, and the nation and majority of the nation is being dumbed down into accepting all this kind of politically motivated, ideologically motivated actions of the state. And it was very rightly pointed out that the kind of sense of fear which has been very successfully generated, by going after those who speak out on, and very, very much the activists, who are taking up causes of people like Bilkis. So that has also worked. So in all, it is a very dark day for our democracy, and these kind of it's an ill omen for our country and for our democracy both.
Flavia, I think Gargi makes a very important point that every time there has actually been a conflict, women's bodies have become a battlefield. Right from partition through riots, you talk about 84, 2002, you talk about local conflicts today, women's bodies have always been a battlefield. And I think we've all seen that at different stages in our life. My question to you is, if Bilkis Bano does not go back to court, if the CBI doesn't appeal, because let's remember the conviction was given by a CBI special court in this case. If no official institution appeals, what can happen legally? Can something happen? Can the court make a suo motu intervention? Because this is an executive decision. What can happen now?
Court asked the Gujarat government. Yeah, I just wanted from a legal point, why did the Supreme Court in the first place ask the executive to take a decision?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Okay, so Gargi is of course asking that when one of these convicts petitioned the Supreme Court after having spent 14 years in prison, the Supreme Court sent it back to the Gujarat government, and therefore the courts are being blamed to some degree. The court could have nipped it in the bud, I guess, at that point. Flavia, let me bring you in. Maybe, as Justice Gupta just told me, there's a difference between what is illegal and what is immoral. And sometimes something can be available as an option legally, but it can still be wrong. How do you see this, Flavia?
I endorse it fully, the view that something that is legally possible need not be morally correct. But here the important point is this decision was given by the Maharashtra judiciary and not the Gujarat judiciary. So one legal technical point is, could the judiciary in Gujarat reverse it or remit it? On what basis this was done? So this is one very important question, and it augurs very bad for a democracy. Separation of power. Which court has what power and under what jurisdiction? I think these are very important questions. But even more disturbing is the caste issue that has come up and the conduct of Brahmins. And are we going to every case try on the caste of the accused person or even the caste of the victim? Is this a new precedent that is being set? And how disturbing is that?
And in a way, and yet I'm glad, I don't know if glad is the correct word, that he said what he did to us, because it exposed in a way that this was not about reform or rehabilitation. This was very clearly a kind of normalization, a welcoming back of men into a certain sort of strata that reflects power and assimilation. I just have a minute left. I'll give Gargi a comment before I end with Yamini. Gargi, can women in this moment unite across ideologies that divide us otherwise?
Yes, I think women should unite. That's what I said in the beginning, as we have seen how women's body, as you said, has been attacked in all cases of conflict. And I'll remind you, Barkha, if you remember Ajmer Dargah case, those rapists are also out. So let's not be selective when it comes to rape or crime against women. And just few days back was 16th August. It was Direct Action Day in Kolkata in 1946, as you said. So history is full of those incidents where women have been raped in riots and in wars and any case of conflict. So we should all come together. And I think maybe in the first place, the Supreme Court should not have asked the Gujarat state government to look into the remission. But maybe because it's a state subject and after 14 years, there's a possibility, there's a provision, the court did that. But may good sense prevail, and I think somebody should appeal to the court, and it can be reversed. It's not that it cannot be reversed. It can be reversed.
Yeah. And talking about Kolkata, before I give Yamini the last word, let's also take a moment to think about the teacher who was forced to resign because she posted pictures of herself on a private Instagram account in a swimsuit. She was speaking to us earlier, and she said that it was nothing short of a witch hunt. And I think we just have to just look at how structurally ingrained, this sort of expectation is of women to be put in these silos and have a lid shut on them and have their aspirations and freedoms shut down. Yamini, a last thought. You've spoken a lot, you've researched a lot on the relationship between the citizen and the state. Where are we standing today? Where do we go from here?
We are standing in a place where the very institutions that were supposed to protect our rights and freedoms have proven to us time and time again that they are serving the forces of power rather than serving the forces of citizens. It is now incumbent on us as citizens to save what we fought for, which is our democracy and the promise of our constitution. I see this very much as an issue, as you rightly have pointed out, about women's rights, as a fight against patriarchy. But above all, I see this as a fight for the values of our constitution, the values of equal citizenship, the values of equality for all, regardless of religion, caste, creed, and gender. This is the fight that we are fighting across every aspect of what is happening in our politics today. This is one really difficult illustration of how far we've come from where we were and from what we fought for in 1947. So the fight, it's open for us now to fight this fight. I don't know that this is going to happen through the institutions of power. Again and again and again, they have reminded us that they don't stand for us as citizens. They stand for power.
And then the bottom line would be that the citizens, in particular women, but not only women, need to raise hell, because that voice of people, sometimes we've seen it in the farmers' protests, we've seen it in the citizenship legislations, can halt political and executive decisions. And it is then on us. It shouldn't be, it feels unfair, but it is on us, and therefore we do need to raise hell. Thank you, Zakia, Soman, Yamini, Aiyer, Flavia, Agnes, and Gargi Roy. Thank you very much. And to our audience, thank you for watching. Take care. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.